In my most frank assessment, I would say that they're criminal. In my entire career, have I never witnessed the level of brutality and use of indiscriminate and unnecessary force against a civilian population, an unarmed, starving population. I've never witnessed that in all of the places I've been deployed to war until I was in Gaza at the hands of the IDF and US contractors.
The gentleman you just heard from is not only an American, he's actually Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, who's a retired US Green Beret, who actually decided to volunteer and sign up for the humanitarian aid distribution in Gaza. Now, as you can tell, he quit after experiencing what he referred to as the deliberate slaughter of desperate and hungry Palestinian civilians. In fact, here's more.
This is not a battlefield, though it might look like one. It's a food distribution point in Gaza. Bullets are kicking up the sand as men wait to get food. It's one of 4 sites run by the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a joint Israeli-US scheme they say replaces the UN and keeps food away from Hamas. This video is of the foundation's armed American security guards opening fire.
I think you hit one.
It was filmed by a US soldier who signed up for the operation in Gaza after he retired and left, he says, when he saw American colleagues and the IDF killing civilians. The soldier is Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, a Special Forces veteran of the US Army's Green Berets.
I witnessed the Israeli Defense Forces shooting at the crowds of Palestinians. I witnessed the Israeli Defense Forces firing a main gun tank round from the Merkava tank into a crowd of people, destroying a car of civilians that were simply driving away from the site.
Now that was a retired member of the United States military, a former Green Beret, an individual who isn't shielding the public from his identity. He is speaking openly, candidly, while revealing his identity in regard to what he saw firsthand in Gaza. So for anyone coming at people like me who go on Piers Morgan's show and essentially share the same information, who accuse people like me of being some sort of anti-Semite for doing so, you're gonna call him an anti-Semite? Or is it just considered unacceptable to ever call out the war crimes that are being committed by the IDF and the Israeli government? Now, the United States says that they're going to do something about this, that they're going to do something about the fact that Palestinians are literally starving to death as we speak. We're gonna get to that in just a moment, but first I wanna go to Cenk.
Yeah, so look, it's unprecedented what Israel's doing to Gaza. The only reason, if you don't know that, the only reason you don't know that is because our mainstream media covers it up assiduously. They feel like it's part of their job to do propaganda for the Israeli government. So did you know that Israel has already killed 49 times the civilians that Hamas did on October 7th? So that's 49 October 7ths in Gaza, okay? So if we were outraged by 1 October 7th, how outraged are we by 49? Did you know that Israel has already killed 300 more civilians waiting for food in line for just enough for their children to survive? 300 more of those civilians killed than Hamas killed on October 7th. Imagine if Hamas was killing people, Israeli Jews who were starving and waiting for food for their children, if Hamas was just killing them one by one by one and had already killed 300 more than they did on October 7th. We would have nuked Gaza by now, right? But when Israel does it, they make up pretty little lies to tell you, oh no, the bad guys made us do it, and 1,000 other lies. If the Israeli government is speaking, the Israeli government is lying. They've dropped the equivalent of 6 Hiroshima-sized bombs in Gaza. They've absolutely leveled the place. But no amount of starvation, no amount of anguish, no amount of death is enough for this radical terrorist government of Israel.
Well, to be fair, there were Israeli ministers at the very beginning of this genocide who said they wanted to nuke Gaza, and they have essentially done that without having to use an actual nuke. Now, while the depraved slaughter and daily war crimes are committed in Gaza, on the other side, in Israel, there's a lookout point that's been established so Israelis can essentially gawk at the Palestinians and their suffering.
Mohammed and his mother, Hidayah, were filmed by one of the trusted Palestinian freelancers we work with in Gaza, who are themselves starving. Israel does not allow international journalists to enter the territory. So we went to a spot overlooking Gaza, a vantage point in the frontline town of Sderot, where Hamas attacked and killed Israeli civilians on the 7th of October 2023. Israelis come here to look at the war, only a few miles away. Since my last visit, vending machines have been installed if anyone needs refreshment. From here, it feels like looking out of one world into another, not distant, but remote and isolated.
Imagine the type of scum you have to be to take a photo like that in front of the devastation in Gaza, as if you're at a tourist site and it's something cute and fun to do.
No, I'm gonna jump in there. That's like taking a picture in front of a concentration camp for the Germans back then in the 1940s and going, this is where we're starving the Jews. Hey, it's a tourist spot. Hey, let's put it on Insta.
Disgusting.
It's disgusting. It's morally depraved. What are you taking a picture of? The murdered Palestinian children? And that's not government officials. There's something wrong, unfortunately, these days in the culture of Israel.
I agree.
Look, there's good news buried in this story. We're gonna get to it in a second, but a lot of tragedy.
So let's talk about the starvation, the hunger that is now killing Palestinians, especially Palestinian children. In the video that we just showed you, you could see one of those children who is skin and bones. It's absolutely devastating. Now, one of the arguments that oftentimes are uttered by various members of the Israeli government is that we're not trying to starve the Palestinians. It's just that we're blocking aid into Gaza, or we're being incredibly deadly in how we distribute our aid because we're worried about Hamas stealing it. Well, interestingly enough, there was a piece published in the New York Times over the weekend. It's rare for the New York Times to publish pieces like this, but I do commend them for doing it. It's titled, "No Proof Hamas Routinely Stole UN Aid, Israeli Military Officials Say." Let me just repeat that last part again. Israeli military officials say. So members of Israel's own military admit, no, Hamas actually is not stealing the UN aid in the Gaza Strip. I'm gonna give you a few more details from the piece. David Mencer, an Israeli government spokesman, blamed Hamas and poor coordination by the United Nations for any food shortages, but the Israeli military never found proof that the Palestinian militant group had systematically stolen aid from the United Nations, the biggest supplier of emergency assistance to Gaza for most of the war, according to 2 senior Israeli military officials and 2 other Israelis involved in the matter. The military officials who spoke to the New York Times said that the original UN aid operation, UNRWA by the way, was relatively reliable and less vulnerable to Hamas interference because the United Nations managed its own supply chain and handled distribution directly inside Gaza. They say there was no evidence that Hamas regularly stole from the United Nations, which provided the largest chunk of the aid. Now, additionally, there's some more evidence that falls in line with what these Israeli military officials are saying. An internal US government analysis came to a similar conclusion, Reuters reported on Friday. It found no evidence of systematic Hamas theft of US funded humanitarian supplies, the report said. But of course, that doesn't stop various government officials here in the United States and also in Israel, of course, claiming that Hamas is stealing the humanitarian aid, which is why they have no choice but to starve Palestinians to death. It's a complete and utter joke. It is a lie. Now, with that out of the way, the Gaza Humanitarian Aid Foundation has in fact proven to be lethal for civilians. This was supposed to be the replacement for the UN organization known as UNRWA. Almost 1,100 people have been killed by gunfire on their way to get food handouts under the new system, in many cases by Israeli soldiers who opened fire on hungry crowds. Now, there has been so much backlash over this reality, not just by progressives in America, not just by members of the left, but even conservative voters are seeing what's happening on the ground. They're furious about it. And I think that Trump is now feeling some pressure to respond to it. And so for the first time, you're going to hear Trump essentially go against what Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, has been saying in regard to starving the Palestinians. Israel denies it, Trump says otherwise. So let's go to the next video where you're going to hear Trump address this to some extent.
We want to get the children fed. We made a contribution a week ago of $60 million, all going into food. We only hope the food goes to the people that need it, because so much, as you know, when you do something there, it gets taken by Hamas or somebody. So we've been sending in a lot of food. A lot of the food that's been going there has been sent by the United States. I spoke yesterday with the president of the European Union, Ursula, who was terrific also on the subject, and she's going to play a big role also in helping us. So we have a good group of countries that are going to help with the humanitarian needs, which is food, sanitation, and some other things. So I'm speaking to Bibi Netanyahu, and we are coming up with various plans. We're going to say it's a very difficult situation.
Now, on Sunday, the IDF said that it would be implementing tactical pauses in fighting in some areas of Gaza in order to allow for the distribution of humanitarian aid. Trump also alleges that the United States will ensure that there will be additional distribution areas in order to get more food to the Palestinian people, who have very much been intentionally starved. But during that same press conference, Trump also says that he knows there's real starvation because of television. He says, I don't know. I mean, based on television, those children look very hungry. Later, he also said that some of those kids that's real starvation stuff. And he complained about not being thanked for allegedly sending aid to the Palestinian people. Quote, nobody said, gee, thank you very much. And it would be nice to have at least a thank you. What about Israel? Has Israel thanked you? The country that we keep shelling tens of billions of dollars to, and yet the prime minister still comes here on US soil and complains about how we're not doing enough for a foreign country, Israel. But anyway, I digress. Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so that's going to get us to the good news in a second.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. But first, a couple more things here that need to be pointed out. First of all, one of our YouTube members with a really poignant comment here. Stoner Wolf said, children in Gaza are asking if there's food in heaven.
Okay, I can't.
So Israel's gone too far for the first time in my lifetime. So did they go too far by any moral standards? Dozens of times, of course. Did they go too far? Literally, in my experience, hundreds of times. Yes, of course, hundreds of times in this Gaza incursion alone, right? So I don't mean for any normal moral person who objectively sees the news. I'm talking about reaching the American people. Because in order to reach the American people, first you have to get through a layer of American politicians who are almost all corrupt, almost all have their top donors as AIPAC and Israeli lobby, et cetera, at least the leadership. And if you don't know, I'll say real quick, because you're never gonna hear it in mainstream media, #1 donor to Trump is the Adelsons, militantly right-wing Israeli family. Miriam is literally an Israeli citizen, also a US citizen, and she's demanding the annexation of the West Bank along with Gaza, et cetera. Biden, #1 donor lifetime, AIPAC. 100% of Republican leadership in Congress right now, #1 donor, AIPAC. 75% of Democratic leadership in Congress right now, #1 donor, AIPAC. Okay, so that is the Israeli lobby. Anyone telling you that they don't control those politicians is either lying to you on purpose to protect the government of Israel, or they're a fool. They don't understand how politics works at all. They think, oh yeah, they'll ignore their largest donor. What kind of a moron is that? Well, I'm usually a mainstream media reporter. Okay, so to give you, that's your context, I have more context for you. As Anna pointed out, the UN and US now all confirming, of course the Israelis were lying. They lie almost every single time. Yes, Hamas was not stealing the food, right? So now we know that. Look, guys, if you see the Israeli government talking, especially this day and age, they have a nearly 100% track record of lying. So that's why when mainstream media says, oh, Israel says this, well, that's it then, Israel said it, right? They're either purposely lying to you and protecting for whatever insane reason the government of Israel, not our government, not our citizens, but the government of Israel, or they're fools and they really don't know anything about the news. Oh, we should just a genocidal government. We should take their word for it. Oh, they were willing to starve children to death, but they would never lie to CNN. I mean, you'd be the biggest idiot in the world to believe that. All right, more bad news. If you notice, Anna gave you that stat of 1,100 killed in the way just waiting for food, and you saw the American colonel, clearly saying, no, there's no question, I saw it with my own eyes. Did you know, so there's 1,200 killed, roughly, it's actually 1,136 or so, 37, something along those lines, killed on October 7th, terrible, tragic, we said it a million times. Only, it's a terrible number, but around 800 to 850 of those were civilians. 300 or so were IDF soldiers, right? So now that's what I mean. They've killed 300, everyone waiting in food is a civilian, now confirmed, okay? So that's 300 more civilians killed just waiting for food while they're starving than the great apocalyptic tragedy of October 7th, which were told is the worst thing that's happened since the Holocaust. So if that's the worst thing that's happened since the Holocaust and the Israelis have done 50 times worse, what does that make the Israelis? And by the way, what breaks my heart is that 80% of Israeli Jews say keep going in Gaza. There's something wrong in the culture, okay? These days in that government, not for Jews across the world at all because they didn't grow up in that culture. They grew up here, they grew up in Norway, they grew up in different places. But that culture has got something deeply, deeply wrong with it, and you could see it in the smiling, people taking Instagram photos behind them of starving children. This is where we're murdering the Palestinians. But there are a lot of good Israelis that are coming out and saying, including 2 giant human rights groups today, inside Israel saying, of course it's a genocide. This is absurd. Do you have eyes and ears? Are you human? Of course it's a genocide. So there are good Israelis like there were good Germans, okay? Yes, I'm saying that, and I don't give a goddamn if you're offended. If you're more offended by that than seeing starving children, you lost a thread at some point. You lost your morality at some point, and you need to go and find it. Okay, so finally now, what in the world is good news out of this?
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, so buried deep in European news is that American government has basically told the Israelis, and we're all gonna have to see if this is real, okay? But they were risking full diplomatic breakdown, including with the United States of America. Because one of the reasons, and this is interesting and just like 2% hope here, right? That Trump doesn't like seeing the starving children on TV.
Oh, is he not merciful?
Okay, so, but guys, remember, this is why social media is so important. This is why the Israeli government, according to several US senators, were trying to shut down TikTok in America, because mainstream media is super easy to control. They'll say whatever Israeli propaganda Israel wants, and they will then call everyone who disagrees anti-Semites, and they'll try to ruin their careers and their lives.
Yep.
So they're an Israeli propaganda machine, right? But now they're not in charge anymore. Everybody's seeing it in social media. Everybody's seeing it in online media, in the podcasts, etc. And now it's even gotten to the president. And so the president often doesn't see anything but Fox News, right? Now he's seeing starving kids, and apparently he's saying, no, this is too much, okay? So what has happened, this is the second part that's very important, is that Netanyahu ordered the airdrops that we're reporting on of not only Israel doing it in the beginning, but other countries doing airdrops of food.
Jordan, Egypt, they've been airdropping food into Gaza, yes,
yeah,
but
and
it's
now the
not nearly enough.
Yes, but now the European nations are going to be soon allowed to airdrop, and he is recalibrating as we speak. Now, that genocidal maniac does not recalibrate unless he thinks, our money, the most important thing to Netanyahu, our money is in danger. So if that's true, which I mean, I don't know that that would ever happen in America, that our politicians would ever be honest enough to represent us instead of Israel. And if you say that's too much, they literally just gave them $500 million in the middle of a genocide, and the vote was 422 to 6. Israel completely and utterly controls our Congress. But apparently Netanyahu's, for the first time, slightly worried. So he went behind 2 Israeli cabinet ministers' backs, did not notify them. I assume that's Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and that they are apparently considering leaving the government.
Oh.
Okay, now we've heard this for 2 straight years. That's why I say it's 2% hope, okay? We're gonna leave. Unless you let us murder all the Palestinians. And by the way, that's literal. Ben-Gvir over the weekend put out a post on X saying, yes, we should starve them, kill them, deny them humanitarian aid and oxygen. So he's in favor of murdering all the Palestinians. So if Netanyahu says, hey, we should only murder half the Palestinians, Ben-Gvir is like, I might leave the government. I signed up for a Holocaust, not a genocide, because Ben-Gvir is a Nazi. So, and he's actually a convicted terrorist. So these literal fascist terrorists are running the government of Israel today. If that bothers you, it should bother you if you love Israel. And you should try to make sure that the country you love is not run by terrorists. Because it definitely is right now.
And I have to end on this because it's important to hear from some people who have some moral clarity within the Israeli government, including Israel's National Security Council deputy head of Israel's National Security Council. Here's what he had to say about why this genocide is ongoing in Gaza. Quote, by now, it has long been clear to most Israelis that the main reason the Gaza campaign lingers on is because of Netanyahu's political, personal, and judicial interests, and he needs the war to go on in order to sustain and even enhance his grip on power. That's the main reason. It has nothing to do with Hamas and everything to do with Netanyahu. That's not an American saying that. That's not some progressive saying that. Even though I've been saying that, put me aside for a second. This is the former deputy head of Israel's National Security Council. You have two former Israeli prime ministers, Ehud Olmert and Ehud Barak, admitting that what's happening in that slaughter campaign in Gaza is a genocide, that war crimes are being committed. Let's just call a spade a spade. You don't have to believe me. Okay, if you don't trust me, you think I'm some unhinged lefty, that's fine. But how about for once in everyone's lives, if you've been in denial about what's happening on the ground in Gaza, listen to what the Israelis are saying, both the terrorists in the government and those who used to be in the government.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.